Halo has finally faced its first proper test in Formula 1. We had an incident earlier in the year in Formula 2 race at Barcelona, but at the start of the Belgian Grand Prix, we had Fernando Alonso's McLaren hit by Nico Hülkenberg's Renault and launched over the top of Charles Leclerc's Sauber. Now, even Leclerc, who was involved in the incident, didn't realise where exactly his car had been hit until he got out of the car and saw a huge black scuff across the front of the Halo. That doesn't mean that if the Halo wasn't there, Alonso's McLaren would have hit Leclerc's helmet and possibly caused an injury, but it's the closest we've come yet to an incident where the Halo's been actively involved in playing a role in basically the trajectory of the cars that collided. Scott Mitchell and Ben Anderson, Autosport's Formula 1 correspondents, are with me. Scott, you've written an impassioned piece about the Halo this week, coming back from the Belgian Grand Prix. Let's start with that. What are your views on the accident and the role the Halo potentially played?
Well, it sounds harsher than it's intended, but basically whether the Halo saved Leclerc is not really what matters. That's not to say obviously you don't want it to have made a difference, but the point is that whether it, as you said, whether it adapted that trajectory to stop it from hitting Leclerc's helmet or not, it's the best example we've had so far of why we need it, why it's so important. I don't think that 2 start line crashes like this in 7 Belgian Grand Prix is particularly freak accident-y. So yeah, you're right. We can't say categorically it saved his life or prevented a major injury, but the point is it was there, and I'm glad that we didn't have to find out.
Ben, a lot of people are saying this is the end of the Halo debate now. Yeah, we've had an incident where it has protected a driver. If it didn't save his life, it's protected him. Yeah. Do you feel that this is the end of the debate, or is it worthwhile still the people who have a problem with it coming forward?
I think it does end the debate. Personally, I've been among the Halo's critics, not
Why?
really for the safety reasons so much as for the aesthetics.
Okay.
It's something that just looks ugly. It's difficult to come to terms with, but over time you've seen the Halo become more integrated with the cars, the liveries kind of make them fade into the background, and like with many safety things, seat belts, helmets, eventually they just become part of the furniture. And I think looking at the Leclerc incident, it's come as close as it possibly could to looking like he was saved by the Halo being there, and if it saves one life, in reality you have to say, well, it's for the good, and you kind of have to applaud the FIA. They had a lot of criticism around introducing the Halo, and I think really everyone has to back off now and just get with the programme.
One of the big things, of course, was that people were worried, and I think even us at Autosport, we were saying, has the FIA rushed the Halo through to get something on the cars this year? The scary thought now, and this is another thing Scott mentioned, is of course that we don't know what would have happened now we've had that accident if they had delayed the introduction of the Halo or any other cockpit protection for another season. And I think we're all quite fortunate to be sat here saying, well, it's good that the FIA pushed it through.
Well, one of the things that Leclerc said is that he wasn't a fan of the Halo, but now he's pretty happy that he had it on his car. And you know, it's one of the points, isn't it? 12 months ago, would he actually have been able to revise that opinion? Very easy to say that he wouldn't have been around to do so. So I think we kind of just have to accept that it's a good thing that we've got it. Whether you like it or not, whether you think it goes against the spirit of open wheel racing or Formula 1 racing or not, it's the right thing to have. And I'm glad, Leclerc's glad, and everyone that was probably involved in that accident is glad that the Halo's on the car.
Yeah, racing's there to be entertaining, isn't it? And it's not there to put people's lives in jeopardy. And it's always going to be dangerous, even if you have a Halo there that protects the head. There are still bits of carbon fibre flying around, bits of car that can smash into you at high speed. You can hit barriers at high speed and do injury to yourself. So as much as people kind of romanticise the dangerous old days, ultimately we don't want to be talking about fatalities in Formula 1. We've had too many already. Thankfully, a lot fewer in the modern era. And if Halo can save lives, then ultimately you have to accept it.
Now, Ben, you've raced a lot of single-seaters in what I would politely call your amateur racing career. You didn't quite make it to Formula 1.
No.
But you've raced single-seaters for a long time. So you've been in what we call open-top cars. Not always at necessarily Formula 1 speeds, but did you ever feel when you were racing that your head was too exposed? Like, what is the driver's perspective, do you think, on the debate?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have to say I never felt that I was too exposed in a single-seater, and I've driven many. But I haven't been in a situation where I've had Fernando Alonso's McLarens spinning like a top in front of my eyes, or a wheel flying across the track towards my head, as happened to Henry Surtees in 2009. So I think it's one of those classic safety debates where until it happens to you, you don't think about it. But when it does, it suddenly becomes, well, why didn't we think of this before? So if you're the Surtees family or you're the Leclerc family, you think, well, it's over. We should have always had this. Why didn't we do it sooner? So I can't say that I would need the halo or always wished it was there, but had I been in that kind of situation, I'm sure I'd have been straight in there saying, yes, we needed it.
Now, we're not sat here saying that the halo is perfect. It's the ultimate solution for cockpit head protection. One of the drawbacks, and this seems quite trivial given the amount of discussion we've just had about incidents and potentially saving lives, but one issue, as Ben mentioned at the start, is the aesthetics. And I thought a great example this weekend actually was the visibility of drivers' crash helmets. Now, Max Verstappen had a fantastic bright orange crash helmet for all of his Dutch fans at what is as close as he gets at the moment to a home race. He was born in Belgium, of course, but he races as a Dutchman. And really, when he was on track, you look at the TV footage or the photos, or if you were one of those fans in the grandstand, you couldn't really see his orange crash helmet. And there's kind of a driver identifier there that's been lost at the moment. We've got things like the IndyCar screen still being looked at. Do we think that the halo in its current form is here to stay, or is there more progress that can be made? And should we perhaps look at screens in the future?
I mean, there'll definitely be progress, and whether the halo sticks around long term, I don't know. We know that it's going to be around in the short term because Charlie Whiting said after the weekend, when they look at these accidents and they use that data to inform the development, and they're in the next generation halos in development now, so that will be on the car for next year, probably the next few years. What it does beyond that, it's difficult to say, because then obviously you have the debate of, do you move away from open cockpit entirely? But you're right, the driver identifier thing is a big problem. It's difficult to work out exactly a way around it, but the special helmets are cool. They're an important part of it. I remember like when Massa had that really the Ferrari farewell, we had the really shiny helmet in Brazil, and at the weekend Van Dorn had a special helmet as well to honour McLaren's first win. And if you don't get to see that, I don't really see the point. It's just a lot of I guess for a lot of retweets and likes on Twitter and Instagram.
When you talk about the identifying of the drivers, I've found myself subconsciously now turning to the massive numbers that they've painted on the sides of the cars, and it's taken the FA a long time to get the teams to make those numbers bigger. We were always saying pre-Halo that they were too small and you couldn't tell difference between two cars that were a close livery or similar helmet design. So already I'm moving away from the helmets because, as you say, the Halo kind of blocks them, and at least with a big number you can tell, okay, that's Perez or that's Ocon or that's Verstappen or that's Ricciardo. In terms of the cockpit protection, the FIA has always been, I think, keen on something other than the halo, at least exploring the options. Remember the aero screen test that Vettel did briefly at Silverstone last year. I think they will continue to revisit other solutions and try and find something that's maybe more elegant than the halo. But ultimately that does move us towards closed cockpits eventually, and I think ultimately that is where it should go. The halo's always felt like a halfway house of trying to get the best of cockpit protection with closed cockpit but maintain the openness. But if you can't see the driver, if you can't see the helmet, what's the point? You might as well just go closed cockpit completely, and then look at you get probably a better aesthetic, and the driver kind of helmet design thing becomes completely obsolete.